Alright everybody, welcome back. So the F-4EJ ADTW kind of falls into that same category of, choosing the lesser of evils, just like the Mirage F1C-200 that I covered recently. By the way, if y'all haven't seen that video, I do recommend checking it out, because it has a lot of the same issues as this aircraft, where Japan really doesn't have any good premiums to offer. Much like the Milan, as a flareless plane at 9.7, the T2 really wasn't in a good spot. It was one of the worst tier 6 premiums. And then this thing came out like 2 patches later and made it completely obsolete. So it's gone. But you either get the choice of the F-40 Sabre, which is a pretty decent plane actually, but it can only research up to rank 6, or the F-4EJ ADTW if you're trying to quickly research jets. And then if you do go with the F-40 Sabre, well, you're stuck with the Japanese tech tree planes, which the F-104J is absolutely pitiful, and the F-1, although it has pretty decent performance, unfortunately, the F1 does not have flares, so it has the same issue as any other flareless plane. I'll probably make a video on that at some point. I've made a habit of covering a lot of the flareless planes about that BR bracket, but this really is your best option. And what are we left with? Well, unfortunately, we're left with what is probably the worst 11.0 fighter in the game. Now, the F-4EJ is based on the F-4E in the American tree. Unfortunately, it does lack pretty much all the things that make the normal F-4E, even somewhat viable in an up tier. The first thing, and the most important for me at least, is the lack of Agile Eagle. A hard-wing Phantom in the year of our Lord 2023 does not fare well. Now, for those of y'all who don't know what Agile Eagle is, I'm going to pop it up on screen. So as you can see on the front of my wings right here, I just popped out combat flaps and some slats showed up. That is the Agile Eagle package. Now, you don't actually have to hit combat flaps and they show up. You can actually bring them in like I'm doing right now and just pull, and they pop out by themselves whenever you're pulling. They're auto slats. And that is the Agile Eagle package, and that is a huge advantage that a lot of the other Phantoms have. Unfortunately, the EJ does not have that. So already we're down 1 compared to the F-4E at the same BR. Now, they do have the same IR missiles. They both have, well, effectively the same IR missile. They're different in name only, essentially. They have exactly the same stats. They're going to perform identical in the game, and even in real life, the only difference is like the fuse, which doesn't really make a difference in the game. You can see they do kind of work. They have pretty mediocre range, maybe a little more than an R60. If they keep their afterburner on, like they make 23M melted right there, they'll ignore flare sometimes, but don't expect it to happen too often. You do get 4 of them at least, unlike some planes like the Mirage, which lets you kind of spam them off, even if they aren't the greatest. And, I mean, they work. Honestly, though, most of my kills in this plane have actually been coming from the gun, or at least a good portion of them, just because the missile kit really does let you down. And you get the Vulcan. Many of y'all are probably familiar with this gun. It does alright. It did get affected by a reel shatter just like everything else, but it does have a high enough fire rate that if you just load the armor targets belt, or the ground target, whatever they call it, it'll shred most of the time, and you'll get plenty of fires, just like I got right there. You do need a pretty decent burst. If you just hit like 1 or 2 shells, it does have the same issue, not having high explosives. So now this is actually one of the few planes I would actually kind of be alright with you bombing in. If you just bring enough for like 1 base that doesn't slow you down too much, that's all I'd recommend you do. You need like 7 750s for 1 base, and maybe bring like 8 or 9 of them just to be safe. Kill 1 base, go ahead and skedaddle. If you bring a full load of bombs, you're way too heavy, and then you're just going to get smacked by a MiG-29, because most of the time you're going to be getting up tiered almost every game. And I'll be talking to the Matchmaker here in a little bit, but for now, I want to talk about the AIM-7E. So you see, I did just kill that SPSK that was way above me, and this is one of those down tiers. Most of the time, you're going to be having massive issues with the AIM-7E. What you're seeing on screen right now is called the time to gain table, and it tells you exactly how long it takes to pull every amount of G's the missile is able to pull. So you can see it has time to gain 0, and it has 0, and it's time to gain 1 at 1.8. 1.8 is how many seconds it takes. So for the first 1.8 seconds, it does not pull at all. Now, once it gets to 2.5 seconds, it is pulling 40%. That's what that 0.4 stands for, of its total pull. So at 2.5 seconds after launch, it is up to 10 Gs. Then it keeps ramping up, and at 4.5 seconds after launch, it finally reaches that maximum of 25 Gs they see on the stat card. You see the issue that we have here? Every other missile at top tier begins pulling within like a second after you launch it. This means that you have massive issues when it comes to high tier battles, because the F-4E, for example, with this AIM-7E2, while yes, it does have much less range, at least, if you're going to like a super close joust, you can at least throw it at around the same range as like an R-27ER or an AIM-7F, and you can get some kills that way. The problem with this missile is that it takes so long to start pulling that by the time it's getting there, most of the time it's already past them. Now, you are able to go ahead and throw it at like 3 or 4 kilometers if they're incredibly slow. I wouldn't throw it any closer than like 6 or 7 kilometers if they're, actually going at good speed. And the issue there is that the radar isn't good enough to justify using it in that regard. Most of the time, we're going to be having issues getting locks, especially near sea level. This radar is not what it used to be. It has gotten nerfed once or twice since when the plane first came out. If you can get a lock, it usually holds it relatively well. The problem is getting a lock in the first place. So most of the time, I've been getting kills with my gun, just like you saw right there with the SMT. And then, if you're lucky, you can get some AIM-7E kills. I wouldn't rely on it too much. I hope this plane gets the AIM-7E2. I know Japan didn't use them, but they gave the EJ Kai AIM-7E2s before with no issue whatsoever. And they've given the F-14 the AIM-7E2, even though it technically can't mount it. It can only mount the AIM-7E4, which is like the exact same thing with just some different electronics. So the plane is able to mount it, is able to guide it as far as I'm aware. Unless I'm wrong, if someone does know, please let me know in the comments down below. But I'm pretty sure it should be compatible. So just go ahead and give it. It would already make the plane much better than it is right now without having to give it, AIM-7Fs or something like that. By the way, don't do what I do here. I got greedy trying to go for my 7th kill, and I went for a full commit head-on against an A-10. Do not be me. Now, here is one of those super long-range BVR kills, and I'm going to be honest with y'all, you're not going to be getting these very often. The only reason I'm able to do this right now is purely because I got a down tier. I am sitting in I believe a 10.0 match. Yeah, there's an A5C right now. And so there is no AIM-7Fs in this match. There's only like R23Rs and stuff like that, and other planes with AIM-7Es and AIM-7E2s. Now, in theory, the AIM-7E does have a bit longer range than the AIM-7E2 because it takes longer to start pulling. That helps it maintain energy better. In most games, it's not going to be helping you, so I wouldn't put too much stock in it. And most of the time, you're not going to have a MiG-21 SPSK up in space for you to shoot at. Because out of the, let's just say, 15 games that I played, just getting footage for this, 2 of them were down tiers. Every other game was a 12.0 match. And this plane in 12.0 is not able to do that, because if you climb to try and shoot people like I'm doing right now, you will get absolutely smoked by an R27ER. You need to stay low in this plane. If, on the off chance, you get a couple 10.0 matches like I'm doing right here, then by all means, go ahead and climb. You're actually going to be competent at these higher altitudes. You still have to worry about, F-4Es in the enemy team and stuff like that, and maybe some MiG-23Ms. But for the most part, you're not going to have any issues. But you can see I'm having a hard time pulling more than like 9 Gs right now. This plane is really not capable of avoiding, AIM-7Fs and R27ERs at high altitude. And since that's what we're going to be fighting most of the time, you do got to keep that in mind and make sure to compensate for it. So, hopefully this plane does get a better matchmaker in the future. I do need to preface this by saying everything I've said today has been at the current matchmaker. If Gaijin goes ahead and adds 12.3, this might entirely change, and this plane might actually be really good. But for the meantime, at least, it's in a really tough spot right now. And I hate it because it looks so good. I absolutely adore the camo on this plane. Like, I love black camos. I love the gold along with it. So, either way, I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to hit that subscribe button. It means a lot to me. I'm trying to hit 5,000 before the end of the year. So, either way, I'll see y'all next time. And peace, y'all. Enjoy the outro.